Welcome back to When Jesus Meets Your Scars. This week's focus is on family projection, how unhealed wounds are often passed down and placed on others. You may have been labeled, blamed, or overlooked, but God's truth can rewrite that story. And now, here is Dr. Hrebik.
Well, welcome back. Thank you for hanging in there with us. And we're praying that you are continuing to study, learn, grow, and heal together. So this concept is always a popular one. This is kind of like triangling on steroids. It's called family projection, the problem child. Every time I mention this, I ask for a show of hands. Who's the problem child? And, half the room raises their hands, including me. So one a lot of people can relate to. So this is from Bowen, the official definition from the Creator. This is the process by which parents project part of their immaturity to one or more children to become less anxious by focusing on the child. The most common pattern is one in which one child is the recipient of a major portion of the projection, while other children are relatively less involved. So here's an example. Mom and dad have a conflict. They have several unhealthy choices. They can fight it out. They can triangle for support. They can distance, cut off, run away from each other. Or they can together project anxiety onto a convenient third party related to blaming and making somebody a scapegoat. So it gets the spotlight off of them. But then the problem is, as they stay on the problem child, it tends to make it a permanent thing, which was the case in my life. So the target, this is from page 94 in your book. The child becomes a target, absorbing arrows from the parent's anxiety. The parents feel better, the child not so much. So the child acts out due to the new anxiety. Parents double down. Child acts out that much more, and down we go. So family projection can be positive as well as negative. Parent was successful in something, well, they want to drive their child to be successful in the same thing. Parents failed at something, well, they want that child to succeed where they couldn't. So they try to force the child's success. And we had both positive and negative. Archery was a good sport to learn, but learning at the tip of a belt, being punished if you didn't win by enough points, that's not healthy, obviously. So in systems language, the parents project their anxiety, and that's it's all about anxiety. And in the Christian base, anxiety is a symptom of sin. So whatever the source of their anxiety, they project it on the child. Child absorbs it and becomes less differentiated. The parents practice healthy relationships, on the other hand, and the child learns by example, and the child becomes more differentiated. So unhealthy choices lead to unhealthy reactions, which lead to unhealthy actions, which lead to unhealthy habits, and an unhealthy system, and then unhealthy choices, and back around we go, and down we go, and a negative whirlwind. So this guy, Dr. Kerr, he's probably the best systems expert in the country. He was a partner with Dr. Bowen, and he has this list of what he calls relationship sensitivities. I'm going to read them. A heightened need for attention and approval, difficulty dealing with expectations, the tendency to blame oneself or others, feeling responsible for the happiness of others, or that others are responsible for one's own happiness, and acting impulsively to relieve the anxiety of the moment rather than tolerating anxiety and acting thoughtfully. So, I don't know, in my world, I carried the whole list. And I think most problem children do carry the whole list, especially if they've been traumatized. The thing is, they carry that into every relationship. They carry it into every emotional system. It's no big mystery why so many are so messed up. Who even deals with these things? Where do you unlearn them? Where do you learn how to unlearn them? Unless you go to professional counseling and you have good insurance or a lot of money, Where do you take care of this? So it's the same in churches as families, small businesses, and even corporations and government. They're filled with relationships, and they have the same relationship problems, dynamics, and sensitivities. Leaders can't admit that they have problems. They can't admit that they can't manage their problems, and they can't take the responsibility. So what are they going to do? They're going to blame others. They're going to overfocus and project on the nearest person that they can. And they're going to replace all these lower level people in a constant stream because obviously nothing is ever their fault. So it's that secretary. If we didn't have that secretary, we'd have a successful business. We need to get rid of her. So they get a new one, and guess what? The same problems are still there because they didn't go out with the secretary. They're there with the leadership. Page 98 in your book, there's a quote, "Projection is part of the human race. Eve ate the apple, blamed the serpent. Adam ate it, blamed Eve. And men ever since have been blaming their wives. Wives blame their husbands, parents project on children, siblings project on each other. It's a family dynamic that goes all the way back to the beginning." Another quote from Mr. Bowen on page 95 in your book, "An over-functioning person is typically one who feels responsible for the emotional well-being of others and who works to compensate for perceived, real or imagined, deficits in their functioning." And both over and under functioning are forms of projection. All right, you're projecting your anxiety onto someone else. In this case, because they can't do it right, they can't do fast enough, so you're just going to do it for them. All right, because you can't handle the anxiety of watching them. So you get a little bit of relief, but it really solves nothing. You're the same and they're the same. You haven't helped anything. And it really only addresses the immediate symptom, which is your anxiety. So here's an example of both. An under-functioning father starts drinking heavily. He loses his job. He's charged with a DWI on the way home. He starts a downward spiral. He gets depressed, moody, irritable. He starts drinking even more. And pretty soon he just gives up. Family members react by over-functioning. They take on extra work to pay the bills. They make excuses for him, pay his fines for him, take all his empty promises at face value, and they even lie for him. So the next step is almost inevitable, which is enabling. According to Bowen on 95 in your book, at the extreme end, the under-functioning one may rely on the over-functioning one to tell him how to think, feel, and act. The over-functioning one may not experience this degree of reliance as a burden. You go ahead and try to intervene in one of those enabling relationships. It is unhealthy, but it will fight to the death to maintain that equilibrium. And every attempt at help is seen as a threat. He's doing the best he can. He had a hard time. We're trying to help out. We're fine here. We don't need your intervention. And there he sits, same problem, and the families circle the wagons around him. Page 96 in your book is a quote from Harrington and co-authors. "Everyone in the system, even the under-functioning one, agrees on where the problem lies. What they do not see is that the symptom grows out of the relationship system. They do not see their role in keeping the symptom in place." And that's pivotal. We mentioned it several times already. Your role, the parent's role, the leadership role, whatever political party is in charge, what's their role? And that when it changes hands, new party doesn't fix all the problems. They don't solve everything. They bring their own problems, and a lot of them include this. So again, next step, almost inevitable, which is codependency. Now, Murren described the term, but it was not coined until the 1970s. Melody Beatty wrote a book called Codependent No More. Really excellent book. Sold 8 million copies. So I have a poster here The difference between a helping hand and enabling behavior lies in the frequency of the assistance. Now, your brother borrows $50 from you, pay you back next Friday. Okay, no problem. Next Friday comes, I had a hard time this week. I just need 50 more. I'll catch up with you. All right, that's fine. Okay, he's your brother. But you know what? After a year of borrowing $50 every week, you have codependency. You have enabled him to not even try to pay you back. So it's a combination. Enabling and codependency are a combination of over-functioning and under-functioning. Taking too much responsibility for others or letting others take too much responsibility for you. And again, both are forms of projection because you're not managing your own anxiety. You're passing it off to someone else. Creating healthy systems is all about curbing unhealthy reactions and learning healthy responses, improving your system one relationship at a time. Kind of like grieving a loved one. You eventually will come to acceptance. It may take a long time. It's the same process for emotional scars. You need to grieve those losses. And eventually you'll come to acceptance, even if it takes a while. You had the loss of a normal childhood. You had the loss of a healthy family. You had the loss of everything that contributed to the bad choices that led to the behavior that traumatized you. So you need to accept those losses as irretrievable, not getting that back. And I think too many people run around saying God's just gonna make everything go away. He's just gonna erase everything. I think we need to accept those marks, just like the barbed wire in the different trees, or the different marks in the different trees. You are scarred. It's a fact of life, and it's not going away. You need to learn how to accept it, how to live with it. And even though they weren't your fault whatsoever, you need to accept them. Otherwise, they're going to be a lifetime excuse. You're going to be over-functioning or under-functioning. You're going to be projecting your problems onto other people. You're going to avoid taking responsibility. And you're going to avoid maturity, emotional maturity. And you can be highly successful, highly paid, highly functioning. You can be as intelligent as they come. But if your emotions are not under control, you're going to be too reactive. You're going to triangle too often. You're going to cut off too often. And you're going to be projecting onto other people way too often. We have a spiritual component part of each lesson. And page 100 in your book is from my friends Harrington. I quote them a lot, not just because they're friends, but because they wrote a really great book, The Leader's Journey. And the publisher actually asked for an update. So unfortunately, sinful reactions are built into our human nature. We are hardwired to react to others in a destructive and self-serving way. That is, it is easier for us to react sinfully than it is to choose to respond otherwise. Paul spoke of this in Romans 7 as sin embodied in the flesh. Even when we want to do good, we often find it easier to act sinfully, imprisoned by the law of sin at work in our bodies. That's Romans 7:15-24. The reality for dysfunctional people, as we keep mentioning, because I think it's important to hammer it home until people get it, because this is a new concept for a lot of people. Nothing is their fault. If only this or that hadn't happened, if only this or that person wouldn't have done this or that, everything would have been great. But now they did this, and oh my God, look at the impact. And they play the victim constantly. The problem is we can see through it in others. And we want to grab them by the ears, don't we? We want to tell them, just grow up. Just take responsibility for something, anything. Just one thing for once. Well, now, a lot of people need to grab the ears of the person in the mirror. Because this is what the Holy Spirit is trying to do for us. This isn't just a system thing. That's a theory that describes behaviors. But the Holy Spirit is one who can actually give us the incentive, the power, the drive, the inspiration to do something about it and help us do it. He is our helper. I have a quote here by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She wrote The 5 Stages of Grief. And I also have a really amazing stained glass image. And I was just so thankful when I found it floating around on the internet. So Kubler-Ross, people are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out. But when the darkness sets in, their beauty is revealed only if there is a light from within. And a similar quote by Melissa Kelly, we mentioned her earlier. She's a PhD from Boston, and she actually went past Kubler-Ross and wrote about the 6th stage of grief, which is meaning making. And for her, it was all about mosaics. Mosaics emerge from brokenness. They are made of pieces, fragments, and shards. They are marked by spaces, gaps, and cracks. The mosaic of grief also emerges from brokenness. After loss, our lives may feel shattered and in pieces, and we may feel that we are alone with our brokenness and suffering. But we are not alone. God's love, the heart of reality, holds us in the brokenness of grief. You might want to find that and just read it a few more times. It's a really excellent, and it's also an excellent book. I actually communicated with her afterwards. So meaning making from grief is the same exact principle as for emotional scars. How can God take those broken pieces and turn them into something beautiful? Not only that, but something useful. What is the mosaic that he's trying to make with your life? And what use does he have for it? So again, both grief and trauma leave scars. But broken people can find new meaning in all of it. God's busy creating a mosaic of broken pieces of your life, and then he's going to fill them with the light of Christ, so that we each become a living work of art, not possible without our damage. I think that's a very powerful thought. So God's involvement in this process of transforming the damage into a work of art, that's the huge difference between secular systems and biblical systems, because it creates a purpose. It creates a direction. We're not just doing systems because it's good for us. We're doing systems because it's good for us, and God can use it and make it good for other people too. So that was the last point in this lesson. I'm going to go over the questions like we normally do. How much effect would you say family projection has had on your overall behavior as a child? And then how did that affect you as an adult? And what are some of the ways you have noticed that family systems theory is an accurate reflection of emotional systems and relationships? What about your family? By now, you should be seeing all the interconnectedness and how, yes, they're building on each other, but they're also creating a big picture for you. And a lot of the same themes are going to be prevalent throughout. Discuss any connections between family progression and your current situation. How do you see it in the cumulative concepts of systems, in particular, differentiation? It's always going to come down to that. The central theme of Scripture is basically self-control, obedience to God, self-discipline, trust in God. These are intentional things, intentional decisions. So differentiation is the same. It's an intentional decision to manage an unhealthy reaction, an unhealthy behavior in you, an unhealthy reaction in you that's become habitual, and most people will defend them to death. And they'll defend it to death for the rest of their lives until they get an intervention, they get an awareness, or God touches them through material like this, just like he did me. So we are grateful for you hanging in there with us, and we hope that you are studying and learning and growing and healing together. We ask that you would help us spread the word. Nothing beats word of mouth. So next week's lesson, multi-generational transmission. And that translates to descendants behaving like ancestors. So we will see you then.
Thanks for walking with us through another hard but healing topic. Even if your family projected their pain onto you, Jesus offers a new freedom so you don't fall into the same pattern with others. Be sure to get your workbook on Amazon to keep processing what you've learned. And see you next time right here when Jesus meets your scars.